ever done something you're just so ashamed of? I mean, something that you're deeply ashamed of. I mean, the answer is yes. I mean, I have, you have. Right? And when you do something, right, or you say something, or you think something, and you know it's wrong, you know it's hurtful, and you just know it's not good, like, how do you feel? You feel guilty, embarrassed, ashamed. And the natural reaction, right, when you feel this, right, embarrassed, this shame, right, is to run and cover. I see this in my kids. When one of my kids, when they do something wrong, and they know it's wrong, they know they did wrong, and I want to talk to them. I want to, like, hey, let's talk. I want to correct. I want to redirect. Well, what do? They'll run and they'll grab a blanket, and they'll take the blanket and they'll put it over their heads tight, and they will hide. And this is the picture, right? It's a vivid picture of shame. Now, you and I, we may not physically grab a Spider-Man blanket, but we do run and cover. We do run and hide. Why? I mean, where does this come from? I mean, I never taught my kids to do that. And maybe even the deeper question is this: where does shame come from? I mean, is it from God? In fact, if you go all the way back to the very beginning, to the creation story in Genesis, in the beginning, God created. God created, right? And there's creation, and then he creates humans, man and woman. And the writer of Genesis makes this remarkable statement, Genesis 2:25. He says, Adam and his wife, they're both naked, and they don't feel what? Any shame. No shame. They didn't feel any shame. We're talking about a shame-free world, a world with no shame, no embarrassment, no disgrace, no run and cover, no need for a blanket. No shame. But what happened? How did it change? Enter evil, temptation, tree, fruit, sin, brokenness, and the result, just a few verses later, Genesis 3:8. Says, the man and his wife heard God walking in the garden. It was during the coolest time of the day, and they hid from God among the trees in the garden. But God called out, where are you? Here's the response. I heard you in the garden. I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid. Afraid, fear, run, hide. And God said, who told you? Have you eaten from the tree I commanded you not to eat from? And now we go from a shame-free world to afraid and fear and embarrassment and disgrace and blame. Enter shame. And it's no longer a world without shame. Instead, brokenness and sin. Flawed, broken, damaged people living in a dangerous world. Uh-oh. Blanket over your head. What are you hiding from? I mean, you may not use a physical blanket, but how are you hiding from your shame? I mean, we hide in our homes, we hide in our rooms, we hide in our offices, we hide in bars and clubs, we hide at parties, we hide in housework and yard work and garage puttering. We hide behind computers, we hide behind phones, we hide behind AirPods. Hello. We hide behind Netflix and ESPN and binge watching. We hide behind fashion and education and careers. We hide in busyness, procrastination, diversion, humor, and bravado. What is shame doing to you? What is it causing you to do? Now, at this point, let me just offer just a little bit of clarity, I hope, between the idea of guilt and shame. Guilt and shame. Now, this happens to me more often than I care to admit, right? So I'll be with some people and maybe I say something, right? And I say something that's just unkind or insensitive, maybe a bit too direct. And what happens to me later in the day, a few hours later, when I slow down a bit, I'll be like, oh, Craig, you idiot. What were you thinking? Why did you say that? Or why did you say it that way? And at that moment, I feel bad, right? We call it guilt, guilty. Because I was wrong, right? I said something. I hurt you, and I need to make it right. Now, that's a good thing, right? I would call that good guilt, right? I was wrong, and I need to make it right. But here, catch this. Guilt and shame are different, right? Guilt is action-based, while shame is identity-based. See the difference? Action-based, identity-based. See, guilt says, I did something bad. I was wrong. I said something, I did something, I did something bad. Guilt believes I am bad. See, we feel guilty for what we did. I said that, I hurt you, I was wrong. And this can be a good thing. This can be a very healthy and helpful feeling. It can cause us to change. But when we feel ashamed of who we are, identity, this is not a good thing. This is not from God. I mean, one author put it this way, and she said, shame is the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. Something we've experienced or done or failed to do makes us unworthy of connection. And when you feel or when you believe you are flawed and unworthy of love and acceptance and connection, you're shame. Like, what is it that you are ashamed of? I mean, what is it for you? I mean, some secret? Maybe it's financial debt, sexual past, sexual present, maybe some kind of addiction or divorce. Maybe you really hurt someone or something that you did years ago and you are ashamed. You feel shame. And what happens? What happens when you feel that? What happens to you? What happens to me? And this is what happens to me, right? When you feel shame is you begin to connect your action to your identity. You can connect the action, your action, to your identity, and you connect the action to who you are. And then you begin to feel and to think things like this. Because of what I did, I'm just a cheater. I'm an addict. Greg, I'm just a bad person. Or I'm dirty and I'm ugly. I'm impure. I'm disgusting. I'm unlovable. I'm weak. I'm insignificant. I'm unworthy. I'm unwanted. And this is what shame does to you, and this is what shame does to me. And it impacts our lives, and it begins to influence the way that we live and the way that we think. Let me give you a few examples of how this can play out, right? When you get caught up in this idea of shame-based thinking, when this consumes and controls you, you begin to think, here's number one, shame-based thinking. We become vulnerable to perfectionism, right? We attempt to silence the shame with performance. If I could just be perfect, right? If I could just get like all A's, or if I can just be the top performer in the office, if I can just outwork her. Or you see this with exercise, people that just like exercise like crazy, right? And we attempt to silence our shame with performance, with perfect performance, and we find it difficult to admit failure. Another way this plays out, shame-based thinking, is that we're critical of ourselves, which drives us to become critical of others. Shame people, shame people. Shame people, shame people. And we hate in others the very thing that we see in ourselves. And I had one of these moments recently. One of my kids, they did something, and it was just embarrassing. It was painful. And it bothered me, and it bothered me for days. And as I'm getting ready to begin to lash out and to come down hard, to have this come to Jesus meeting, I hear this gentle whisper. Well, Greg, where did they learn that? I mean, who taught them? Who modeled it for them? Oh, that's me. Oh, shame. I need a blanket to run and cover. See, you see this all the time, right? We live in a very critical world. You ever read the comments on an online article? Unbelievable. I mean, what is driving that criticism? What is driving that negativity? See, we're critical of ourselves, which drives us to become critical of others. Here's another way that shame-based thinking kind of plays out. We use self-defeating thoughts to shield ourselves from disappointment. Self-defeating thoughts, like worst case scenarios, right? You ever do this? Like, oh, I just can't. I mean, I'll never be able. I can never. I'm just not. Or the blame, like everybody. It's just everybody's out to get me. Everybody, right? We focus on the worst possible outcomes, sabotaging opportunities and relationships, and it leads to toxic, negative thinking. Can I just be clear with you for a second? This is not from God. And into all of this shame and embarrassment is Jesus. And the writer of Hebrews writes these powerful words to followers of Jesus, and it's found in Hebrews chapter 12. And look what he says, Hebrews 12:1. He says, therefore, since we're surrounded by such a great a cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles us, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. I mean, what's the writer saying? Let's break this down for a minute. He says, therefore, since we're surrounded by such a great a cloud of witnesses. Now, anytime you see the word therefore in the Bible, you have to ask, what is it there for? It's referring to what happened before. Now, aren't my parents glad they spent all that money on my grad school, right? What's happening before? What's before? And in this case, what's before is chapter 11, Hebrews chapter 11, which is known as the faith chapter. If you read Hebrews 11, you will see there are women and men of faith. And their story and their witness by their faith, by their confidence and belief in God, by their hope in God. I mean, we're talking about the kind of confidence that changes the way that you live, your thinking, your actions, your belief. And the writer is saying, we've learned about many people who trusted God long ago. He says they lived these victorious lives of faith. They're like a big crowd all around us, and we should copy their example. We should follow their example because they show us, they demonstrate that it is possible to live by faith. And this should inspire you. This should motivate you in your faith, in your finding and following of Jesus. And he says, therefore, since we're surrounded by this great a cloud of witnesses, it motivates us. Then he says, throw off or get rid of everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. And the writer here, he's going to use this illustration of the idea of a race, of running a race. Now, some of you are like me, you hate to run, but you get the idea of a race. And he's like, hey, I want you to take the mindset of someone running a race and get rid of, throw away anything that's extra weight, anything that's a distraction, anything that's an impediment. You just get rid of it. If it hinders you, if it impedes your life of faith, get rid of it. Throw it away. Take it off, right? He says, get rid of it. And he's like, what's holding you back? What's keeping you from? And then he says, the sins that we do make us fall down very easily. He says, we must not let those sins rule us. Why? Look what he says. Since we're surrounded by a great cloud of witness, like let them inspire you, get rid of anything that slows you down, right? And he says, run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Run with perseverance. Run with perseverance the race marked out for you. Now, the idea of run, again, is forward progress. It's keeping going, right? Run with resolve. Keep going. Don't stop. Don't give up. And then look at the language. The race marked out for us. Or in other words, it says the race prepared for you. See, the path, the plan marked out for you. Listen, you see this? Look what he's saying. He's saying that God has a race prepared for you. God has a path. God has a plan prepared for you. It speaks to your purpose. It speaks to your meaning. We see this all throughout the writings to the early church. Ephesians 2:10, he says, you are God's workmanship created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God has what? Prepared beforehand that you should walk in them. He says, you're God's masterpiece, that you were created in Jesus to help people, to do good. And notice the wording, which God prepared when? Beforehand. God prepared in advance. God prepared beforehand. Get this. This is all. God has a plan for you before you were even born. And then I love this next line. Look what he says. You should walk in them. It's there for you. It's for the taking. It's attainable. You should go for it. God has this plan prepared for you. You should go for it. Do you ever wonder about your purpose? Like, why? I mean, why am I this way? Why do I have this personality? I mean, why am I good at this, but I'm not at that? Or why am I interested in this, but man, this is boring. I don't enjoy that at all. Why? Why is that? Your plan, your purpose, your mission was prepared in advance for you before you were born. Look at this. If you look at your talents, right, and we're talking about it, 'cause here's the teaching, right? This is important. Jesus and the New Testament writers, they emphasize this, and if you get this, there's so much purpose to your life. This is why you matter. This is why your life matters. This is why your choices matter, right? So look, if you take your talents, right, your God-given talents, your abilities, like this is just what you're good at. Like you're just natural. Some of you are just naturally good at math or music or like money, finances. Some of you can like build and work with your hands. Some of you can draw or do art, right? It's just this natural ability. So if you look at your talents, right, and then you overlay that with what I call the heart. This is like that, like what is it that you just care about? Like what is it that you dream about? Like what is it, and maybe the negative side of this, what is it that bothers you? Like if you see something and it bothers you, it keeps you up at night, it moves the needle, it stirs you. There's this idea of passion, right? So if you take your talent and you take your heart, your passion, and you overlay it with God's mission of helping people find and follow Jesus, of helping people find their way back to Him. If you overlay that at the intersection of the Venn diagram, boom, there it is. That's your God-given purpose. The race marked out for you, which God had planned before you were born. See, and at Miami Church, our mission, our goal is to help you follow Jesus, right? Is to help you reach your maximum kingdom potential, to be who God created and shaped you to be. God has prepared the way that is in front of you, and you must continue to be strong while you run along the way. You must choose to run the race well. See, and then he gives you the key, right? Here's the key. He keeps going. The writer of Hebrews says, fixing your eyes on Jesus, The pioneer, I love this language, the pioneer and perfecter of your faith, for the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Looking unto Jesus. As we're running, as we're on our focus, our target has to be Jesus. Now, our goal as a church in 2022 is to intentionally and strategically push, inspire, and challenge you toward Jesus, toward taking your next steps. And the conversation we're going to have on Sundays, neighborhood teams, serving, giving, everything is about pushing, inspiring, and challenging you to look to Jesus, who the author describes as the author and pioneer, the perfecter of your faith. Jesus is the one who trusted God completely. And your faith starts with him. Your faith starts with Jesus, and he will help you trust God all the way to the end. I mean, here, well, who is God? What is God like? Well, here's your answer. Look to Jesus. Look to Jesus. Our goal, our mission is to push, inspire, and challenge you toward Jesus. Look what it says. It says, for the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and has sat down at the right hand of God. The joy set before him. Okay, this is speaking to the idea that God had a plan for Jesus. Jesus actually had a mission. God had a plan for Jesus. And the plan was that he was going to endure, right? He endured. He persevered. He kept going. I mean, what about you? Where is it that you want to give up? He endured, and then look, here's our word. He despised, or he scorned the shame. And Jesus accepted punishment on the cross. He chose to receive so much pain. He did not think about being ashamed to die like that. He knew that God had prepared something very good for him, his mission, his purpose. And then the writer says, now he is alive, and he's active, and he's working on your behalf. He endured. Don't give up. Let's go. He endured, and he scorned, or he despised the shame. And Jesus scorns the shame that crushes your soul and kills your joy. So your shame, my shame, your lies, your hidden eating habits, your sexual sin, your financial failure, your deepest secrets, your darkest hurts. Maybe you're ashamed. You're ashamed of what you look at, or maybe you're ashamed of what you think about. Maybe you have deep shame over what you said or what you did, or maybe even what you didn't do. And shame leads to self-doubt and even self-hatred. Shame of who you were then, shame of who you are not. But let me connect all this. Let me connect all the pieces. Look what he says. He says, friends, fix your eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of your faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross. He despised, he scorned the shame, and he sat down at the right hand of God. Look to Jesus. Whatever you're feeling, look, I get it, right? I've done things, you've done things, and you are ashamed of them, okay? And there is a healthy level of guilt to go, I was wrong. I need to ask for forgiveness. I need to make it right. There is a healthy level of guilt that causes us to change, and that is a good thing. But when it is not a good thing, as it becomes an identity, this is who we are. And the writer of Hebrews is saying, it is not who you are. He says, no, that is not who you are. Look to Jesus. Fix your mind. If you want to get rid of shame, take your focus off of you and on your shame and put your focus onto Jesus. You're never going to rid yourself of the shame, of the embarrassment, of feeling ashamed until you take your eyes off of you and your shame and you put he says, look to Jesus. He says, Jesus is he's the perfecter of your faith. Take your next step in your faith journey, right? Look to Jesus, the author and finisher of faith. For the joy set before him, look at the language here. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, despising its shame. Now, at first pass, right? Joy, endured. Those words don't seem to go together, right? Joy and endured. But here's the deal, okay? The joy set before him, okay? Jesus had a clear purpose and mission, right? He came to die for you and me. He came to make a way for us to be in a right relationship with God, right? Okay? The joy set before him, the joy of his mission, but the joy caused a lot of pain. He had to die a brutal death on a wooden Roman cross. Here's the deal. Let me connect this for you, right? Okay? God has a plan set before you, right? Talents, heart, mission, right? Let me tell you something. If you go after, if you follow, if you try to reach your maximum kingdom potential, be who God created you to be, right? There is a lot of joy in that because you're being who God created you to be. But guess what? It will not be easy. There will be setbacks, there will be pain, there will be challenges. To be who God created you to be will not be easy. No one that's ever changed the world, no one's ever made a difference. It was not easy. He endured the cross, despising its shame. He looked at it and says, shame, you are not in control. Shame, you will not control me. You will not guide me. I have defeated you. And friends, through Jesus, there is victory over your mistakes and over your shame. And then it says he sat down at the right hand of God. With this idea that he's alive today. He's working on your behalf. He's available to you. He's with you. Lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. So much hope for you today. There's so much purpose and meaning. Whatever you're feeling, again, it's okay. If we do something wrong, we should feel guilt. If we say something or do, it's okay. That is healthy, right? I was wrong. I need to make it right. Forgive me. God, I'm wrong. Please forgive me. I want to make it right. But that is not who you are. You are who Jesus says you are. And he says, you are my son. You are my daughter. I love you. Oh, friends, I pray that you would take your eyes off of you and your stuff and turn it to Jesus today. God, thank you for this truth, for this word. Thank you for the model of Jesus who modeled what it means. God, I pray that we as a church, as a community, that will look to Jesus, who is the perfecter, the author, the creator of our faith. God, strengthen our faith, strengthen our belief in you. God, I think and know that you want to do great and mighty things in this community this year. And so we trust you in that. And we praise you now. And we pray in the name of Jesus. Amen.
We're now going to transition into our time of communion. And personally for me, communion is the highlight of my week because it's the time where I pause. I take time to seek God, to seek forgiveness, quite honestly, for when I've fallen short during that week. We all do. We all find missteps when we're not hitting that mark, when we're not walking with God in the moment. And Jesus at the Last Supper said every time we take of the cup and the bread that we should do this in remembrance of him, remembering his broken body and shed blood for the forgiveness of our sins. So right now, let's partake in together, seek God, and ask him to purge and to remove from us anything that's keeping us from the relationship he's intended. you.